All right, so we're on the record. I have to remember to say that as well. So please excuse us as we get used to being back in person and not in WebEx. I think I finally just got my WebEx spiel down, and now we have to switch gears. My name is Katie Byrne. I'm the Executive Director of the BMZA. Immediately to my left is Becky Witt, our Board Attorney, Leland Sheldon, one of our members, James Fields, our Chair, Bill Cunningham, a member, and Sabrina Turner, a member as well. We are missing one board member today, but we can move forward. That's Otis Freeman. We can move forward with 4 board members to hear all of the appeals. You'll notice the screens to either side of us. There are City Council is handling hybrid hearings. Board of Estimate is handling hybrid hearings. At this time, we are not having hybrid hearings yet. Neither is the Liquor Board. We have to go through pretty much a rulemaking process to change in order to accommodate a hybrid. So we're either all virtual or all in person. So we hope to remain in person for the foreseeable future until we can get to the hybrid option. Just again, want to make sure that this is a little bit of a change in procedure. We're having everyone sign in, applicants as well as people testifying for and against. You also notice there was a column on the left-hand side that asked you, in the event of an appeal, would you like to receive your notices electronically, a yes or a no? So in order to do that, you will have had to have filled in your email address, right? And circled yes for us in the event that there is an appeal. Just a few, I think that's it just for the minor housekeeping duties. The docket was posted on the board out there, and at this time I will turn it over to our chair, Mr. Fields.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for coming. And pardon us, there may be some rust in the in-person version of these dockets. So we will endeavor to render a ruling at the end of the docket for those matters that are contested. I think on today's docket there are just 3 matters that are on the regular docket. In any event, you may feel free to contact the zoning office at 410-396-4301 to hear the result of your case. But until then, we ask that you not do any work on your project until you get your actual decision, and certainly don't do any work in Baltimore City without pulling the proper permits. We have a few postponements today, and I'll announce what those are in case you're here for those matters. Some are already scheduled to be reset. Others, there is no date at this point in the future for them to be heard. But just pay attention to the case number and the address, and if you're here, just know that those matters will not be going forward today. Case number 2021-230, 501 through 503 South Broadway. Nate Prettle is the appellant. That matter is postponed. That will be heard on June 7th, or June 7th docket. Case number 2021-103, 1803 Eastern Avenue. Derek Falcon is the appellant. That matter is postponed. Again, 1803 Eastern Avenue. Case number 2022-127, 1724 Gulf Street. That matter is postponed. Didia Sierra is the appellant. That matter is postponed today, but will be heard on June 7th. Again, 1724 Gulf Street. And finally, case number 2022-130, 3417 Chestnut Avenue. Topping LLC is the appellant. That matter is postponed with no future date as yet. Again, 3417 Chestnut Avenue. That matter will not be heard today. The remainder of the docket is broken into 2 parts. There's the consent docket and the regular docket. The regular docket I've mentioned, I believe we have 3 matters scheduled on that portion. The consent docket are comprised of cases for which the board believes it has sufficient information to approve the appeal. So for all intents and purposes, if you're on the consent docket, it's a good thing because your appeal will be granted. But I will call those cases, and I ask that you folks line up here down to, I guess, to your right, to my left, in the order in which I call the cases. And we will get you up here, introduce the case. We'll hear any reports from planning and staff, and then we will dispose of the case, which is a positive disposal of the case. And so that will take a while because we have plenty of consent matters on the docket. And on those regular cases, similarly, but you won't be lining up. We'll just call your case, you'll come, the appellant will have the floor first to present the case. We'll get reports out of the way, planning and staff. We'll hear from the appellant, we'll hear from any opposition, and just like in court, the appellant has the final word on a reply or rebuttal. And that will conclude, those matters, and those matters will be relegated to deliberation for a decision at the end of today's docket. All right, with that, we'll go ahead and call the cases on the consent docket. And again, if you could, from the first person lining up sort of next to the podium there, and everybody to that individual's right, just line up in order, and we'll begin to hear your cases. First case, case number 2021-307, 1904 Mount Royal. The appellant is Chris Weston. Next matter will be 2022-109, 2510 Madison Avenue, Anthony Marriott. 2022-121, 2435 West North Avenue, Calvin McCargo Jr. 2022-122, 273 South Elwood Avenue, Michael Castagnola. 2022-124, 5103 Bel Air Road, Kareem Peoples. 2022-126, 4017 Old York Road, My Father's Plan, Inc. 2022-128, 3702 Glenmore Avenue, Habib Kazali. 2022-132, 3307 West Northern Parkway, Dana Haynes Jr. 2022-133, 3916 Foster Avenue, Jacqueline Hasselberger. 2022-134, 229 East Montgomery Street, Michael Zoltowski. 2022-135, 2936 Elliott Street, Pete Weinberg. And finally, 2022-139, 808 South Curley Street, Effie Halichi. Yes, sir. Oh, yeah.
Forgot about that.
We're gonna have everybody raise their right hand so you can be sworn in.
Okay. Do y'all solemnly swear, tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right.
All right.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you, Mr. French. All right, we'll go ahead and we'll start with case number 2021-307, 1904 Mount Royal. Mr. Weston,
Yes,
how are you, sir? Welcome.
I'm good, thank you.
Okay, this matter addresses variances necessary to construct a deck over an existing parking space and enclose one side with a 6-foot-high wooden fence. Here, any reports we have from planning and staff?
The requested variances are 1 minimum rear yard setback, 20 feet is required, 1 foot is proposed, so it's a 19-foot variance request. And then the maximum lot coverage is 60% required, 97.5% is proposed, so it's a 37.5% variance. The case was previously postponed by the board to allow the appellant to obtain approval from CHAP, and CHAP has approved the application as of March 8th, 2022.
Thank you. Martin French for the Baltimore City Planning Department. As noted in the staff report, the property is in the Mount Royal Terrace Historic District. It was necessary for CHAP to approve this, and the department recommends that approval be subject to the condition that the improvements are constructed in accordance with an authorization to proceed issued by the Commission for Historical and Architectural Preservation. Thank you.
All right. And Mr. Weston, you agree to that condition?
Yes.
All right. Sir, is there anything you'd like to add to your application at this time?
No.
Very well. The board having heard your appeal, we believe we have sufficient information to approve your appeal.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Have a great day. Case number 2022-109, 2510 Madison Avenue. Anthony Marriott?
Steve Ballard, Maurice Thompson, owners.
I'm sorry, I'm going to need you to say your name and speak it a little louder so the reporter can make sure we hear you.
Steve Ballard, Maurice Thompson, with the owners.
Okay.
And Sir, do you mind just spell both last names?
Thompson, THOMPSON.
Okay. All right, and this matter addresses variances necessary to construct, I'm sorry, nope, doesn't. Variances to interior side and rear yard setbacks related to construction of a garage, is that correct? All right, and we'll hear from staff and planning.
Minimum, 2 variances required, minimum interior side yard setback, 10 feet is required, 0 is proposed, so it's a full 10-foot variance. Minimum rear yard setback, 25 feet is required, 0 is proposed, so it's a full 25-foot rear yard setback.
Thank you. Planning Department has reviewed this application, notes that this property is in the Utah Place, Madison Avenue Historic District. Unlike the previous approval, we recommend that approval of this application be subject to the condition that the improvements are constructed in accordance with the authorization to proceed issued by the Commission for Historical and Architectural Preservation. Thank you.
All right, Joe, do you agree to that condition?
We do?
Okay, is there anything you'd like to add to your application at this time?
No.
Very well. Board, having heard your appeal, we believe you have sufficient information to approve your appeal. Thank you so much. Case number 2022-121, 2435 West North Avenue. Calvin McCargo Jr.?
Yes, sir.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
All right, this is a request to use the premises as 6 dwelling units. And I'll hear from staff and planning.
2 variances are required for this use. A minimum lot area variance, 1,800 square feet is required. 1,350 square feet exists, so it's a 450 square foot variance requested. Off-street parking, 6 spaces are required, 0 spaces are proposed, so it's a 6-space variance. My understanding, the structure is partially collapsed. There was no land use card available for this, and the last use was as a single-family dwelling, but this is in a C1 district.
Okay. Thank you.
Planning Department has no comment on this application. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. McCargo, is there anything you'd like to add to your application at this time?
No.
All right. The board, having heard your appeal, we believe we have sufficient information to approve your appeal.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Case number 2022-122, 273 South Elwood Avenue. Michael Castagnola. Good
Sure.
afternoon, sir. This matter addresses variances to bulk regulations related to the construction of a 1-story rear addition. Is that correct?
Sure.
All right. We'll hear from staff and planning.
1 variance requested, minimum rear yard setback, 20 feet is required, 0 is proposed, 20-foot variance is requested.
Planning Department has no comment on this application. Thank you.
All right. Mr. Castagnola, is there anything you'd like to add to your application today?
No, sir, just appreciate y'all's consideration. Thank you.
All right. The board, having heard your appeal, we believe you have sufficient information to approve your appeal.
Thank you.
Thank you. Case number 2022-124, 5103 Bel Air Road. Kareem Peoples?
Yes, sir.
Good afternoon, sir. We are here on this application seeking to use a portion of the ground floor as an office. Is that correct?
Correct.
All right. You'll hear from staff and planning.
This is a conditional use for an office for tag and title. It's located in an RMU, mixed-use district, which is intended under the code to create a mixed residential and commercial environment. The neighborhood commercial requirement of pedestrian orientation is not required under this section of the code.
Okay.
Thank you. Department of Planning has reviewed this application, recommends that approval of the application be subject to the condition that all signage installed on this property in support of the office use comply with the requirements for row house mixed-use overlay districts as stated in Table 17-201 of the zoning code. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. French. Mr. Peoples, do you agree to that condition?
Yes, sir.
All right. Is there anything you'd like to add to your application today?
No, thank you, not today.
All right. Well, the board, having heard your appeal, we believe we have sufficient information to approve your appeal.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good luck to you. Case number 2022-126, 4017 Old York Road. My Father's Plan, Inc. Is the appellant, and this matter addresses a request to use a ground floor front as a retail goods establishment and the remainder as a small youth center. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right. We'll hear from staff and planning.
I'm sorry, before you, their names?
I'm sorry. Yeah, could you say that for the record, please?
Daoud Thomas, Executive Director, My Father's Plan.
In here.
Daoud Thomas, Executive Director, My Father's Plan. Angel,
Spell that if you would, sir.
Dawood, Thomas. Angel Edner, President of Penn Lucie Neighborhood Association.
Okay, the spelling of your last name, ma'am?
E-N-T as in Tom, N-E-R.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Back to the report. We have conditional uses, 2 of them. 1, neighborhood commercial retail goods, and 2, as a community center. That's all I got. How about you, Mr. French?
Planning Department would note for the record that it is necessary to have a variance of the minimum lot area requirement for the community center use that's proposed, but the department is supportive of this. The department has no objection to approval of this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. French.
So we have an addition of a minimum lot area variance on top of the 2 conditional uses then. Sorry about that.
You have that record, for the record? Got it. All right. Is there anything you'd like to add to your application today?
No, sir, that means a thumbs up, what they say, right?
Well, this means thumbs up. The board, having heard your appeal, we believe you have sufficient information to approve your appeal.
All right, thank you.
Thank you so much. Good luck to you. Let's have the salutations. Case number 2022-128, 3702 Glenmore Avenue. Habib Khazali.
Yes.
Mr. Khazali?
Yes, sir.
How are you, sir? This is a request to install a prefabricated 2-car metal garage in the rear. Is that correct?
Correct.
All right. We'll hear from staff and planning.
1 variance is required for this construction. A minimum rear yard setback of 25 feet is required. 20 feet is proposed. So it's a 5-foot rear yard setback requested.
The Planning Department has no comment on this application. Thank you.
All right. Mr. Khazali, is there anything you'd like to add to your application today?
No, thank you for the consideration.
Okay. Well, the board, having heard your appeal, we believe we have sufficient information to approve your appeal. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. That's it.
That's it. Have a great day. Case number 2022-132, 3307 West Northern Parkway. Dana Haynes, Jr. You are?
Tanya Lawrence.
All right, Ms. Lawrence, thank you for appearing. This is a request to use a single-family home with large family daycare that will consist of 12 children. Is that correct? All right. We'll hear any reports we have from staff and planning.
Again, this is a conditional use for a daycare. There is an existing daycare center for up to 8 children at this location, so it's an increase from 8 to 12.
Okay.
Planning Department has no objection to approval of this application, but notes that for safety reasons, it would be good for the applicant to contact the Department of Transportation, as this is on Northern Parkway, which is a major thoroughfare, to determine if there's anything that can be done for safe drop-off and pickup of children. Thank you.
Would the applicant agree to do that contacting so that we can be sure that we have safe drop-off and pickup?
Yes.
All right. Is there anything else you'd like to add to your application today, ma'am?
No.
All right. Board, having heard your appeal, we believe we have sufficient information to approve your appeal. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Case number 2022-133, 3916 Foster Avenue.
Yes, sir.
Okay, Jacqueline Hasselberger is the appellant. We have today,
I'm her dad, Kim Peary.
I'm sorry, sir?
Kim Peary,
Okay, could you spell your name for the?
Peery.
Okay,
I'm Jacqueline's dad.
all right. And will you be heard, sir?
I'm Matthew Peterson. I'm representing the contractor.
Wonderful. This is a request seeking variance to bulk yard regulations related to the construction and 12-foot by 14-foot 3-inch addition at the second floor rear. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. We'll hear any reports from staff and planning.
2 variances are required. First one, minimum lot coverage, 80% is permitted, 80.3% is proposed, so it's a 0.3% variance request. Minimum rear yard setback, 20 feet is required, 14 feet is proposed, so it's a 6-foot rear yard setback request.
Planning Department has no comment on this application. Thank you.
Very well. Sir, is there anything you'd like to add to your application today?
No, I think we're fine.
Very well. The board having heard your appeal, we believe we have sufficient information to approve your appeal. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a wonderful day.
Likewise, thank you. Okay, case number 2022-134, 229 East Montgomery Street. Michael Zoltowski is the appellant. And this is a matter seeking variances to bulk yard regulations related to the construction of an addition at the second floor rear, 9 feet 8 inches by 18 feet, and a balcony. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, and who do we have here today?
This is my wife, Mary Lisa Zoltowski.
I'm sorry, first name?
Mary Lisa Zoltowski.
And you are Michael Zoltowski?
Michael.
Wonderful. We'll hear any reports from staff and planning.
3 variances for the construction of the addition. 1, minimum interior side yard setback. 10 feet is required, 0 is proposed, so it's a full 10-foot variance request. Minimum corner side yard setback, 15 is required, 0 is proposed, 15 is requested. And minimum rear yard setback, 25 feet is required, 0 is proposed, so the full 25-foot variance requested.
Planning Department reviewed this application, noted that this property is located in the Federal Hill Historic District. Therefore, any exterior changes, the additions, alterations are subject to review and approval by the Commission for Historical and Architectural Preservation. In addition, the proposed Juliet balcony, as shown on the plans, appears to project approximately 2 feet outward from the side wall of the proposed rear addition and over the public right-of-way of Battery Avenue's sidewalk. Therefore, the applicant must also obtain approval for this feature of the building addition from the Department of Transportation, in addition to the CHAP approval, if approval is granted by the board. The department therefore recommends approval of the application subject to those conditions. Thank you.
Okay, folks, having heard those conditions, are you agreeable to those conditions?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Is there anything else you'd like to add to your application today?
No.
Very well. Board having heard your appeal, we believe we have sufficient information to approve your appeal.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's nice. Case number 2022-135, 2936 Elliott Street. Pete Weinberg is the appellant. You are Nate Prettle.
Nate Prettle here on behalf of Mr. Weinberg.
All right. And this is a request seeking variance to bulk yard regulations related to the demo of existing addition at first floor rear to construct a 3-story rear addition. Correct?
That's correct.
All right. And we'll hear from staff and planning.
2 variances are requested for this application. Minimum rear yard setback, 20 feet is required, 3 feet is proposed, so it's a 17-foot variance requested. And maximum lot coverage, 80% is required, 93% is proposed, so it's a 13% variance requested.
The Planning Department has no comment on this application. Thank you.
All right. Mr. Prettle, is there anything you'd like to add to the application today?
Just that it's nice to be back in person and see all the familiar faces and a new face or two here. So.
Awesome. Likewise, sir. Well, we appreciate you coming. And we can tell you that the board, having heard your appeal, we believe you have sufficient information to approve your appeal.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. Final case on the consent docket, case number 2022-139, 808 South Curley Street. Effie Halici?
Yes, I'm representing the owner, F.A. Halici. My name's James Spinelli, Spannelli. I'm managing the project for him.
Okay, wonderful. And this is, this application seeks variance to bulk yard regulations related to the construction of a second floor rear addition, 12 feet 3 inches by 10 feet, correct?
Yes.
All right, we'll hear from staff and planning.
1 variance is requested, minimum rear yard setback, 20 feet is required, 10 feet is proposed, so it's a 10-foot variance request.
Planning Department has no comment on this application. Thank you.
Well, sir, Mr. Spinelli, is there anything you'd like to add to your application today?
Just one question. On the initial application, we also added we had a roof deck that we were going to be adding, and I didn't see that on the written docket today. Is there a variance required for a roof deck?
All depends on the maximum height of the building and how high that went up. Let's take a look really quickly at the.
Okay.
Bear with us, we'll
Sure, thank you.
check it out.
Jump in there.
So this is Becky. Our records show that a variance is not required for the rooftop deck.
Okay, very good, thank you. I appreciate it.
Great, all right. The board, having heard your appeal, did I say this yet? We believe you have sufficient information to approve your appeal.
Thank you, appreciate your
so
time.
much. Good luck to you. Okay, now we can turn our attention to the regular docket. And we will begin with case number 2021-301, 230 through 232 South Wolf. The appellant is Shane Gherkin. And this matter seeks to consolidate lots, variances necessary to construct a second and third floor addition, use premises as a multifamily dwelling with 7 units. And so we have the appellants here. We have opposition on this one?
We do.
Okay, where's our opposition? Okay. You can come on up, sir, and be on, to my right. Swear the witnesses?
Do you solemnly swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth?
I do.
All right, so let's hear any reports we have from staff and planning.
Two variances are requested, an interior side yard setback. Well, just let me start from the beginning. So this is the construct a second and third floor addition to use as a multifamily dwelling consisting of 7 dwelling units. 2 variances are required. Interior side yard setback, 10 feet is required, 0 is proposed, so the full 10-foot side variance is requested. And then bicycle parking, 2 long-term, 1 short-term spaces is required, 0 are proposed. 2 long-term, and so it's the full 2 long-term and 1 short-term bicycle parking space variance request. The appellant will provide 8 on-site parking spaces for 7 dwellings, so there is no off-street parking variance required. The board will note that this matter was heard but not decided on February 8th for an earlier set of plans in which the appellant had requested a consolidation of 4 single-family dwelling lots to create 1 big multifamily with 12 dwelling units. Planning recommended disapproval at the time because of the increase in the density. The appellant updated his plans and has reduced it from that earlier date, February 8th, to today from 12 units to 7.
And the planning department, as noted, did object to the original proposal for 12 dwelling units and has no objection to approval of 7 dwelling units. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. French. Okay, we will, okay, for the appellant. Mr. Barry, welcome.
Welcome back, everyone. Al Barry, AV Associates for the applicant. I'm here, he's here with me today. As was stated by staff and planning, this started out as a considerably larger number of units without the required number of parking spaces. It's a building which is essentially, for the most part, a commercial building, 1 big open space which uses a warehouse we can testify to. And what I would, and the variances, if you looked at the plan, revised plan, you'll see are really de minimis in terms of the impact on anybody. It really is infilling some space on the roof. And we feel that the uniqueness of this property, which is mostly a commercial property more than anything else, allows the board the authority to approve the revised plan with the parking, which will be totally within the building. The building takes up the entire lot. So I was surprised to hear some people are here in opposition. We've met with the Neighborhood Association. There's a letter in your file. I don't know if that was read into the record. We sent it.
If it wasn't, I just forwarded it to you.
Okay.
We met with the Community Association. They've been in support of this, so I'm anxious to hear if there's any concerns that gentleman to my left has. Sean, you want to talk about?
No, we'll let him finish, but then we'll see if we have it. He said he just forwarded it.
Let's read if we could wait till the letter is read from the Community Association.
Sure.
Oh, Michael, you just sent it? Okay. Yep, got it.
Now we have it.
It was a letter from the Upper Fells Point Improvement Association, to whom it may concern. This This is confirmation Shane M. Gherkin participated in the recent Upper Fells Improvement Association meeting on January 15th, 2022. Mr. Shane Gherkin shared the architectural drawing information about the proposed development for 230 South Wolf Street and answered questions from our membership, including immediate neighbors to the property. It is significant to mention Shane Gherkin initiated contact with UFPIA in November 2022 and promptly participated in our land use committee the very same day. His first contact with me, the very same day of his first contact with me. The zoning board needs any additional information, I can be available by cell and reached at X. Bill Middleberger, President.
Okay. Is that the letter you're referring to, Mr. Berry?
Yes, and the board may remember, he was here by himself, and this question came up about the size of the number of units and so forth, so he agreed to the postponement. He started working with our firm to revise the plans, which we've done, still have the community support, and I'll respond to any questions that come up from the opposition.
Okay, thank you so much. Sir, go ahead. I'm sorry, your name?
Yes, my name is Ian Churchill.
Okay, Mr. Churchill.
I am opposed to this variance in this case. I am the owner and resident of 226 South Wolf Street. My property is adjacent to 228 South Wolf Street and 235 South Durham Street. I'm opposed to the construction of additions, specifically on the third floor of Wolf Street and the second and third floor in the Durham Street property. I'm concerned that the proposed construction will restrict airflow and sunlight reaching my property, both in the backyard and in the interior of the house. I believe that this restriction will negatively affect both the value of my property and the enjoyment thereof. I am therefore opposed to the variance insofar as the construction would block sunlight and airflow from reaching my property. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, sir. Okay. Any questions of the gentleman?
Where's your house?
226 South Wolf Street. It is immediately north of 228 South Wolf Street and east of the 235 Durham, 237 Durham building.
Okay, thank you.
So there's a house between you and the properties that are here, that they're here for today, correct?
It is my understanding that 228 is part of their proposed building.
We only, I was going by what was listed on my.
Okay. Any additional questions for Mr. Churchill?
No.
All right. Okay, Mr. Berry?
Well, I wish he would have contacted us before this. Did you have any indication of trying to reach out to us so we could speak to you about this?
No, sir.
Okay.
I had hoped that you would contact me. This process was begun before I moved in. We bought the property and moved in on December 1st, so I believe a lot of the discussion happened before we moved in.
Let me ask if the board, now that we have his objections to it, all of us have been up on the roof of this to show where the additions are going to be. My professional opinion, there would be no impact on the adjacent property owner. I am willing to, if we could take this up in 2 weeks, so at least give us a chance to talk with him, to be fair about it. We postponed it once. There's no other impact on the community other than perhaps this adjacent property. I think to be fair, we should probably sit down with him and see exactly what he's complaining about, because I don't see it myself, but you have to be up on the roof to see what the addition would do and how it would affect the properties.
Okay. Are you able to do anything on the next docket? I thought we were full on that.
If this is it, I think we can put this on the 10th.
Okay.
Would it put it back on the consent docket?
We could, assuming everything is worked out, we could put it back on the consent docket on the 10th.
I mean, I would like that. I mean, it's up to the owner whether he agrees to that or not, but this has been delayed for a while, not
Sure.
any reason other than trying to cooperate. So if we could have it on the next meeting, we'll meet with them and we'll come back and see what the result is.
Okay, is that what we are?
That's what we have to meet with them.
All right, because we're meeting 3 weeks from now.
We are.
I'm
It is.
throwing myself.
Yeah, it's 3 weeks from now.
It's,
Okay.
oh, 3 weeks
The
from
10th.
now.
Yeah, that's acceptable to us, to give you an opportunity to speak and hopefully come to an accommodation.
Okay.
That'd be fair. So we'll postpone the matter today, formally on the docket, and to be reset for May 10th.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, folks.
Thank you.
Okay. That's formally postponed. Okay, calling case number 2022-110, 900 William Street. Dwayne Taylor is the appellant.
How are you guys today?
Doing well, thanks. And this is a
Good.
This is a request to use for 3 dwelling units, variance required for off-street parking.
Do you want me to swear them in real quick, or do you want to?
You probably.
Let's get the opposition up here if we have.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Are you in opposition on the other side?
Yeah, the opposition will be on the other side, if you don't mind. Right over here, sir.
Would you all just raise your right hand for me, please?
Sure.
Do solemnly swear affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right.
Okay, again, this is a request to use the premises for 3 dwelling units. Variance is required for off-street parking. I'll hear from any reports we have from staff and planning.
2 variances requested. 1, a minimum lot area variance, 2,750 square feet is proposed. 1,360 square feet is provided. So it's 1,390 square foot variance. Off-street parking, 3 spaces are required, 1 space is provided, so it's a 2-space parking variance.
Planning Department reviewed this application, noted that this property is located in the Federal Hill Historic District. Therefore, any changes to the exterior of the structure are going to require approval by the Commission for Historic and Architectural Preservation. The department notes that this property was last authorized for use as a healthcare clinic, which is a non-conforming use. The proposed use would extinguish the non-conforming use of the property. However, as noted by BMZA staff, the lot only encloses 1,360 square feet. The amount required for 3 dwelling units is 2,750 square feet, which would require a 50.5% variance. The department considers that amount excessive in relation to the amount required by the zoning code, table 9-401. The existing building contains 2,630 square feet of floor area and can be arranged as 2 dwelling units, which would still require a lot area variance of 38% for approval. The department notes that any exterior changes, including additions, demolitions, and alterations, are subject to review and approval by the Commission for Historical and Architectural Preservation. The department recommends that approval of use of this property as a multifamily dwelling containing 2 dwelling units be subject to the condition that all exterior changes, including additions, demolitions, and alterations, are completed or installed in accordance with an authorization to proceed issued by the Commission for Historical and Architectural Preservation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. French. Okay, so, Mr. Taylor?
Yes. The first comment I want to make is that she just read that the property was used for a commercial use. Going through the zoning administrator, that was not what's on the books. 2 units are already on the books.
I'm sorry, what?
2 units are already approved. The property is zoned for 2 units currently. The building consists of 2,600 square feet. That's where our problem is. It's a large building for that block. The lot area is relatively small, but the building above grade is 2,600 square feet, I think 2,630. There's a similar property across the street of Warren Street on Williams that has the same footprint and is the same identical structure. And that building contains 3 units. And the 3rd unit we were trying to add to it is an efficiency unit, not a full unit, but an efficiency unit, which would contain 400 square feet. There were some concerns brought up about parking. We had a meeting with the parking authority, and they were willing to give us 2 residential parking permits. And this is an owner-occupied building. This is Mr. Stafford here. He's the owner of the property.
Okay, so you would intend to occupy one of the units?
Yes, it's owner-occupied. And we met with the community. They had some parking concerns, but they never mentioned anything else about not wanting to have 2 units. They had some parking concerns, and we were aware of that.
Okay. And the community that you met with, which organization was that? if you know?
Preservation Group of Federal Hill. We did it by Zoom, so it was only 5 people in that meeting.
I'm sorry, they were in favor?
No, they just had parking concerns.
Okay, gotcha. Thanks.
Sir, could you say your name one more time?
Taylor, D-U-A-N-E, Dwayne.
Dwayne Taylor, you're right
Yeah.
there.
Okay.
Okay. Any additional questions of Mr. Taylor at the moment?
No.
Okay. Mr. Taylor, are you okay with us going to the opposition at this point?
I'm sorry to hear.
Can we hear from the opposition at this point?
Yes, sir.
Before
Yes,
we
sir.
go, I have a question.
Sure.
It's zoned for 2 dwelling units.
Currently.
Is the bottom space, the
Basement?
is that used for anything?
No, the 2,600 square feet, no, because of the ceiling height.
Okay.
It's not habitable.
Okay.
And the window locations, the window's relatively small. So we would have to make major changes to the exterior, which would require chap improvement,
Right.
and that just doesn't work for us.
Okay.
Okay. So why don't we turn our attention to the opposition? You could state your names for the record so we know who we're hearing from.
Right here.
Yeah, right here, sir.
I'm John Bocci. I am the parking chair for the Federal Hill Neighborhood Association.
Could you spell your last name, if you would?
B as in boy, A-C-C-I.
Okay.
I did speak with Mr. Fury about this. Article 32 of the zoning code specifically requires a minimum of 1 additional street parking per dwelling in the districts. As a neighborhood, our primary concern is the number of decals to parking spaces, and we've been having a lot of bleed with additional units being constructed. Presently, we have about 1,150 active decals, an additional 970 visitor decals, 2,100 plus parking permits have been issued for 954 parking spaces. The situation is dire, and the density suggested by units like this will just make an almost untenable situation much, much worse. We've been seeing a lot of multi-unit attempts. We've been forced as a neighborhood to oppose any additional units without additional off-street parking. It's simply, the mathematics are just overwhelming at this point. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Question for you. Have you addressed this with the parking authority? Additional decals?
We have been in touch with the parking authority numerous times. There's very little we can do in terms of additional parking. We've gone back and forth with individual streets about maybe diagonal and other short-term fixes to add a few more spaces. With the improvements down at Rash Field, we've been seeing a larger influx of visitors, guests, game days, of course. It's very difficult. If I'm not home from work by 6, I may not be parking within a half mile of my home, and the additional decals just are making this so much worse. I've seen the number of issued decals and visitor passes going up 1% to 2% every year, and of course the number of parking spaces is not going anywhere.
Can I ask a question?
No, not yet.
Okay.
Well,
Do you mind if we ask the applicant a question? Either I can't see it or it's not on here.
Sure.
Could you identify the square footage for each one of your units?
That's going to be tough. It's 2,600 square feet. There's 2-bedroom units, roughly little less than 1,000 a unit. In the stairwell, common area, and then the efficiency was about 500 square feet.
Okay, the efficiency number matters. Which one is the efficiency?
It's a
unit?
small second floor rear.
Second floor rear?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, you did answer my question, so thank you for, you said you addressed it with the parking authority. Anyone else?
Yes.
Go ahead, sir. Tell us your name.
Hello. My name is Francis Landolph. I've lived in Federal Hill neighborhood for 25 years. And
Francis Randolph?
Landolph, that's with an L, Landolf.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Bocci addressed the entire neighborhood. I'm just going to address the 2 blocks that are adjacent to this property. Over the past 10 to 12 years, we've seen a steady conversion of owner-occupied row homes to rental row homes. In the past 10 to 12 years, there have been 7 row homes that have been converted from owner occupancy to rentals. 5 of those row homes have been converted into what amounts to dormitories. That is, the owner would add bedrooms and bathrooms to accommodate 4 or 5 unrelated individuals paying rent. Each of those individuals potentially having their own vehicle, and therefore the vehicle being registered to that address, having the ability to have a decal in that vehicle. Of those 5 that are referred to as co-living units, 1 off-street parking place was added. So that's just those 2 adjacent blocks. Now, if we look at the total number of rental units on the 100 block of Warren and the 900 block of William, there are 19 row homes with rental units in it, and only 18 row homes that are now owner-occupied. And remember that 5 of those row homes are now essentially small dormitories. In addition to that, just on the next block, we have Harbor Hill Apartments. Harbor Hill Apartments is undergoing significant expansion. They currently have 72 apartments. They're adding another 70 apartments. They're going to have over 140 apartments. But starting in August, they're not going to provide parking for any of their tenants. And that, during the construction of this addition, that means for at least a year, there will be at least 72 rental units that don't have any parking, off-street parking at all. So, in addition, I'd like to offer, many people are opposed to this based on the parking. I'd like to offer into the record a petition in which many of the residents of the neighborhood signed. I would like to say to Jonathan and Dwayne that nobody signs this petition with comfort or joy. I mean, nobody likes to be in the position of welcoming you to the neighborhood with an objection. So trust me, it's not personal. We'd love to have you in the neighborhood. But we have to resist this because even though it's 1 apartment, we've seen over the past 10 or 12 years the continual chipping away at the quality of life of the people in our neighborhood so that investors can make the numbers on their business plan work. It's not fair. It's not fair to the owner occupiers. It's not fair to the residents. So it's for that reason. May I offer this into evidence?
Absolutely.
Here is a spreadsheet with the data that I provided on the conversions to apartments. Absolutely. And this is a summary of my testimony. And I very much appreciate this process and the ability for us to testify. Thank you.
Question for you.
Yes.
The apartment building that you referenced with the currently 72 apartments with the impending addition of 70 more.
Yes.
That is online to be constructed sometime
Yes.
soon?
There was a previous owner of that building, and there was such community concern about the addition of all those apartments that they sold the property, and the new owner has decided, come hell or high water, they're going to do it. So this new owner is going to add an additional, I think it's 69 or 70 apartments to the existing 72.
Without parking availability.
Without parking availability during the construction, which will be probably a year or more. Not only they have parking available for the current tenants, but the current tenants will not be able to park during the construction because there is a underground parking garage being constructed on the current parking lot for the tenants. So all of the existing tenants have gotten letters saying you're on your own with respect to parking during the construction starting in August.
Okay. Thank you for the additional information.
Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Hi, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir.
My name is Mark Swimmer. I'm also a resident of Federal Hill.
Can you spell your last name if you would?
My last name is Swimmer.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to say a few words. I've been a resident of Federal Hill for just over 30 years. A number of years back, I started the Preservation Committee for our board of the Neighborhood Association, which I chaired. I also sat on the board of the Fells Point and Federal Hill Preservation Society and sat with the Design Review Committee as well. When I first moved into the neighborhood, I also sat on the board of the Neighborhood Association and chaired the Parking Committee. So, if I might, there was something that was said right at the beginning by this young lady standing. I thought you had said that the building as it sits is about 1,300. I didn't write the numbers down. 1,300.
The lot area.
And then
lot area.
that you were asking the owners were asking to almost double the size. Is that correct, or was I thought you said 1,300 to 2,600?
It's the variance that's being requested is the minimum lot area variance under the code is that 2,000, wait a minute, hold on, maybe, sorry, is 2,750 square feet. Or 2,750 square feet is what is proposed. 1,360 is what's provided, so the variance is 1,390 square feet.
But is
So,
that consistent with what the owners said?
The square footage of the building.
Building versus the lot.
It's a
So
large
he-
building on a.
I see.
large building on a
You're
small
talking
lot.
about just I'm sorry.
Yeah, think lot versus building.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's a large building.
So I also agree that it's a wonderful neighborhood, and we have a real problem with parking. I have not seen the building plans that the owners have come up with, but I do remember from my past, from the history that I've had with the Parking Authority and with working with housing and the Preservation Society, that in order to add a new dwelling, you had to add a new parking space. And I also heard that the owner had said that there were presently 2 stickers or 2 permits available to the
building,
to the property.
Yeah.
So the property does have an existing garage
Right.
at this point.
Yes, sir.
And I have not checked with the Parking Authority to this point. I wasn't expecting that I was going to be here today because of some travel that I'm doing. But my understanding would be that if there's 2 dwellings, only one space is first taken for the garage unit. So I'd find it odd that the Parking Authority would allow 2 stickers for 2 different units, because the first car parked at the space should be assigned to that space, and they're not entitled to have a sticker. So I'm uncertain of that. I just thought I would make it make mention of it because it seems that what the variance should be for is not one extra space, but for 2 extra spaces. And I also have not, I've not been informed at this point whether or not there's the need for an additional curb cut. I know there's already one curb cut for this garage. And that, you know, in fact, would possibly take away a whole nother space on the street to add this, extra curb cut. Another thing, and almost finally, another thing I'd like to say is that is it Mr. Taylor?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Taylor had said, thank you, that the adjacent property is 3 units.
Across Warren Street. It's identical footprint, identical
Correct.
building.
It appears to be at least, in its appearance, the same type of property, a corner. But unless I'm incorrect, that if it was at one time zoned for 3 units, I'd be very surprised to know that it's still currently zoned as 3 units. I, by the way, have a number of properties that I own within 2 blocks of my home, which is in the 800 block of William, by the way.
Are they rental properties?
Mine are rentals, yes. I live in my house and I have 4 other properties. But the reason I brought that adjacent property up is because, and also, unless I'm incorrect, there hasn't been anyone that's lived in that property for years and years. That's why I question if there is zoning. I know that it needs to be renewed, and it would just surprise me that they have still 3 dwelling units in that property.
Can I
I have no
respond?
objection, of course.
Hold on a sec, hold on.
I don't have the house number,
Okay,
but yeah.
so these, to you, Mr. Swimmer, the properties that you own in the area, are they in Federal Hill?
All within 2 blocks of my home.
Okay. How many tenants do you have in those units?
I have one multi-unit property, which is 2 dwellings, and all the others are one, or a couple, but they're full houses.
Okay. And do you know how many decals are allotted to those properties that you own?
Well, again, from my history with the parking authority, my understanding is a house or dwelling, a house I should say, is entitled to 4 parking stickers per household. Now, if you have a house if you have a house that's split into 2 units, then you have to take those 4 stickers that are available to the house and split them between those 2 units. So one apartment would get 2 stickers and the other would get 2 stickers. In Mr. Taylor's situation, it seems to me that because there is a garage, and I was involved with the parking committee even while I did not sit on the board of the neighborhood association, at a time when the parking authority wanted to get a list of every property in the neighborhood in the historic district of Federal Hill and provide a schematic or a graph of every home that had a parking space so that the parking authority could assign those garages to those properties and know that when someone came in asking for a sticker that they should be denied because they have at least for, if it was a 1-car garage, for 1 extra sticker or 1 less sticker, and if it was a 2-car garage for 2 less stickers. But yes, as Fran had mentioned before I got up here, it's a wonderful neighborhood, and I welcome you both. I've been very active, as you've heard, on committees and on the board for years past, but things have changed, and a lot of also Fran mentioned something about the property that's expanding from around 72 or 74 units to 140, I think, or 140 plus units. One thing I didn't think I heard him mention was that additionally, not only are they building this extra garage, which will take a year if they're on schedule or more, but also that a lot of people that live there had 2 spaces. They had the opportunity to buy an extra space or rent an extra space while they were living there, and I had a number of friends that lived there. Still have friends that are living in that building. The parking that they're building underground, at least from what I've heard, and on numerous occasions, is not going to be a sufficient amount of parking spaces to allow existing tenants their second sticker. Everybody's sort of having to make adjustments, including the new people that will be coming in to move into that property and the people that are already in that property. So they're building something that it's a little surprising to me that it was whatever they're doing is passed or has been approved. But it's not just that. It's the growth of the neighborhood and the surrounding neighborhoods that have brought so much parking issues into our neighborhood and our streets.
Okay.
So thank you for hearing me out.
Thank you, sir.
You're very welcome.
Thank you.
Sure. Mr. French?
Could you restate the Planning Commission's position?
Yes. The Planning Department noted that a 50.5% lot area variance would be required for approval of 3 units on this property and considers that amount excessive. The department would not object to 2 units, which, as the applicants have testified, may already exist in the building. That still requires a 38% lot area variance. However, this is an historic property in an historic district, and therefore there may be conditions that are unique to this property that would justify a variance of that type. The real issue is the additional unit something that should be approved or not? And in the opinion of the department, it is something that should not be approved. In addition, the department recommended that whatever the board decides, it be subject to, if it is an approval of 2 units or 3 units, it be subject to the condition that all exterior changes are completed or installed in accordance with the authorization to proceed that would be issued by the Commission for Historical and Architectural Preservation, since this is in the Federal Hill Historic District.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question for the applicant. I looked at the form, and on it, it says something about an unusable garage.
Yeah, I mean, that's because we're rehabbing the property. We're talking about structurally, it's not sound currently.
Okay.
So it's part of our proposed redevelopment.
Okay, and is it part of it as a living space or?
No, it's a garage.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So there will be 1 off-street parking spot?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And right now, nobody lives in this. This is just, you guys are.
No, there was a previous tenant in the building from the previous owner. He just recently purchased the property.
Okay.
Any more questions on that?
I was waiting for you to finish. And also, the lights just went out, which made me feel weird.
Don't scare me.
You want me to call on you? Yes, Mark.
The department would note that the official dimension of this property is 17 feet wide, and the zoning code requires a space of 9 feet by 18 feet. Therefore, it appears this lot may flare towards the rear.
It does, towards Warren Street.
And the applicant should provide a survey that demonstrates the dimensions of the interior of that garage if it was going to be used as a parking space, that it would clear 9 feet by 18 feet.
I understand.
I believe it flares because on the second level, the previous owner added an extension hitting the garage, and the garage is outside, a portion of the garage is outside the property line, but it's existing.
Okay. Go ahead, sir. You may respond.
Anybody else? I just want to respond to a couple of things. First concern is the Harbor Hill. I mean, that's a large structure. That's doubling in size. And I don't know whether the community had a big opposition to that expansion, but this is a small house. And if we kept it as a 2-unit building, it would be 2 3-bedroom buildings. I mean, 2 3-bedroom units. And with the challenges, Federal Hill has always been ongoing. is that the fact that people are getting cars, more than one car, although one parking space is required, people with 5 or 6 bedrooms, there might be 2 or 3 cars. So it's not necessarily a problem with our project. There might be some overall issues with the community in terms of their own challenges. And maybe there should be a parking study or whatever. But I think the opposition to this small project is enormous at this point. You have any, want to say anything? And one more point. He's an owner occupant, he's got a 203K, so he's got to live in the property. So he's not going to be flipping the property. He's got to live there by law, federal law.
I have a question. It's about that proposed additional unit.
Yeah.
You guys said it's going to be an economy space. I think
Efficiency.
Efficiency space. I think I said I read it somewhere in the application.
Studio
That it would
apartment.
be a studio and possibly used as an Airbnb.
That's been looked at.
Have you guys decided if that's something you want to do?
Well, that's not something we investigated thoroughly. We went to the lender. We didn't present that to the lender.
Okay.
We presented it as a owner-occupant development, and it has to be that way according to 203K requirements. And he has opportunity parking at that location. If this was in the middle of the block, I could see the opposition. But this is a corner property on Warren and Williams, so there's opportunity for parking for the tenants on both sides. And Warren is a substantially wider street than Williams Street is.
And where's the closest public transportation to the property?
I think the next is on Light Street, I believe.
Right. How many lines? Do you know?
That's about a block, 2 blocks to the west.
So I think I looked. I think it was the 67 and possibly the Silver Line are within
I'm not sure the
less than a
number.
5-minute walk to the property.
I'm sorry?
The public transportation,
Oh,
the
yeah,
bus stops are within
about
less than
5 minute walk.
less
Yes,
than
sir.
5-minute walk to the property.
Yes,
Very
sir.
close. Okay.
Mr. Chair, I know there was a lot of different discussion. I just want to give you the historical land use for the property. I
Yes.
didn't put that necessarily in my report. So it's had 2 dwelling units in some other use since at least 1960. So there's 2 dwelling units. So the 2 dwelling units, and looking in the file today, still attached. So in the last legal use was 2 dwelling units and a healthcare office. So since at least 1960, there's been 2 dwelling units and an other business use at the property,
Okay, 2 dwelling units plus a business.
plus a business.
Do we know when? Does anybody know when that business use stopped being used, or if it has ever been used?
I've been 30-plus years in the neighborhood, and that business was not operational when I moved in, but I don't know the exact, at least,
Anecdotally, 30-plus years.
I'm sorry?
I said anecdotally, 30-plus years, you haven't seen anything.
I've never seen anything there.
I have a doctor's office in 1983. That's the last approval.
I'm sort of close.
Yeah.
And that's part of our challenge is because of the size of the structure. The other properties in the block are in the middle of the block or towards the south end are relatively smaller in terms of square footage for the building, not necessarily the lots. That's the challenge. Now, there's some plans floating around, I believe. Somebody asked to see the plans. I think this gentleman did. You want to still see the plans?
Well, I said that I haven't seen the plans.
Yeah, the unit mix is 2 units with 2 bedrooms, and then an efficiency unit. So the impact we thought would be reduced on the community, because typically in an efficiency unit, you have 1 person. 2-bedroom units, you can get away with having 2 people, and that's it. If we did a larger structure or less units, more bedrooms, then that would pose, I think, some challenges in terms of parking.
May I make one other point?
We'll allow it. We don't.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Thank you. I just, because I didn't say this before, I'm sorry.
Mike.
Because I didn't say this before, and also not having formally met Mr. Taylor and his partner.
Now, he's the owner.
I'm sorry.
I'm professional here.
Your last,
Kirsch?
Stafford.
Stafford.
Mr. Stafford and Mr. Taylor, pardon me. I think it would be wonderful to see them restore this property and put it back in a better condition and under the regulations and their discriminating eye. So I just, I didn't want to say that I'm not in favor, if it's a 2-unit property is really, and being considered for a 3-unit property is really where my personal opposition came from. And another thing I'll make mention of is Mr. Taylor said that because it's a corner property, there's parking on one street and there's parking on another street. But I wanted to mention that both of those streets are in Area 9, which is our very small, almost 4-block square area that is 9 versus some other.
Area 9 hits a 100% parking usage rate at about 545 on average each evening. That's no available parking spots in the entire community. I'd just like to reiterate, it's Article 32. You add a unit, you add an off-street parking spot. It's just something that we have to advocate for as a community across the board, because this is not a one and done. This is multiple investors seeking multiple units, multiple properties, year after year after year. The density doesn't support it. Certainly the resources on the street don't support it.
Let me add one thing, if I can.
Okay, and this is going to be the last thing.
Okay. Economically, this project wouldn't work without 3 units. The cost of construction and the cost of acquisition, the numbers just don't work. Okay? They just don't. The condition of the building, community wanted to see the building. It's one of the worst buildings in the block. And this is a solution to resolve that and make him whole. So I understand the parking concerns, but the parking concerns in Federal, I used to work for Streeter Brothers, Eccles and Rouse. We used to go down to Market all the time. The parking issues in Federal Hill historically have always been a challenge, have always been a challenge. Even without Harbor Hill expanding, they've always been a challenge. So with that, any
All right.
comments?
Any more questions from the board? Just let me make that clear.
Nothing from me.
Very good. All right, thank you. Thank you all for your
Thank you
presentation.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Mr. Chair, before we move on, I believe we were able to, they were able to resolve the first matter that was on the regular docket.
Okay.
You want to recall that?
Preservation.
That was Wolf Street, 2021-301.
All right.
You didn't want to wait 3 weeks?
Okay, we're going to recall the case of 2021-301, 230 through 232 South Wolf Street. And Mr. Berry, well, you have the floor.
One of the advantages of being back in person is the ability to negotiate and answer questions, as opposed to the virtual hearings. So welcome back from that standpoint. And I won't let the former protester, I'll let him speak for himself, but we've shown in the plans, we've explained what it is in relation to his property. And I believe you'll hear that he has withdrawn his objection.
Okay, very well.
Yes, I withdraw my opposition and state my support for the variance.
Thank you so much, sir. Appreciate that. All right.
And thank you for your delay to allow us to do that. Thank you.
Ms. Byrne, does that make it formally a consent case?
That would make it formally a no, I think we have to go through it. I think it'll still be a regular docket with no opposition now that the opposition has been resolved. Yeah, so you'll get a written, they have to vote on it.
Yes.
Okay, thank
Understand.
you. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, do I have any more cases? Is that it?
One more.
Where is it?
One more.
Regular church. Okay, calling case of 2022-123, 3900 through 3986 Roland Avenue. Episcopal Church of the Diocese is the appellant, and this is a request to subdivide into 3 lots and retain existing uses. And I will hear reports.
This is a conditional use and variances are requested. So the first conditional use, neighborhood commercial office. The variances are as follows. Maximum lot coverage, 40% required, 73% proposed. It's a 33% variance requested. Minimum interior side yard setback, 15 is required, 12 is proposed, so a 3-foot variance is requested. Minimum corner side yard setback, 20 feet is required, 6 feet is proposed, 14-foot variance requested. Minimum rear yard setback, 25 feet is required, 3 feet is proposed, 22-foot variance requested. The background is the Episcopal Diocese seeks to consolidate 7 contiguous properties and then subdivide the property into 3 lots. 1 lot will be used for an existing church, middle lot be used for a cemetery, 3rd lot will be used for an existing office, formerly a small chapel. None of the uses will change from how the property's been used for many years, and there will be no additions. The setback variances to the existing chapel office are already created by, or essentially being created by the redrawing of the lot lines for the newly subdivided lots. The issue is that a cemetery is not permitted or conditional use in any other zoning district except for open space. So when we're talking about uses, the board doesn't have the authority to approve it. If we were just consolidating, it would be one thing, but it's a consolidation and a re-subdivision, which essentially creates 3 unique lots. And now we have obviously an existing use that can't go anywhere. It's not like you're changing a cemetery use, right? But the problem is, technically, under today's code, doing that analysis, the only place you have in a cemetery is open space. That's the problem that we want to make the board aware. So, Mr. French is up next.
All right. Planning Department wishes to note for the record that a subdivision application for this property was filed on January 31st of this year. It proposes the minor subdivision described in this application. Agency comments are still coming in on that subdivision, so this has not yet been scheduled for a Planning Commission hearing. However, the department recommends that if the board does approve this application in some form, that it be subject to the condition that the proposed subdivision is completed and recorded in accordance with the subdivision plan and development plan that would be approved by the Planning Commission. Thank you.
I think the board could definitely move forward on the conditional use for the office. But the issue is, the project is to use as a church, cemetery, and office, and the board can't necessarily get into the cemetery use. So it's, yeah, so the 2 lots you could address. It's weird. It's just 100% weird. And we couldn't figure out how to have the board not grant something you didn't have the authority to.
Okay.
Maybe Mr. Berry can.
Mr. Berry, would you like to talk about that?
We'll turn it over to you, Mr. Berry, as the applicant.
Let me give the context of this with Mr. Carroll, who's with me from the Episcopal Diocese, and some background.
Yeah,
we were sworn.
I was.
Okay. Oh, you were, okay.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? I do. All right.
So both of us can sort of elaborate, which I think is useful for the board and may give the board some comfort in why you should be able to approve this. Basically, the diocese has been looking at a number of properties around the state that they have control, and as you know, some of these properties are going to be decommissioned in a sense. I don't necessarily. And so the church, which is at the corner, which is the main structure, is likely to be put up for sale. And so that required 2 things to happen. It required a subdivision of the church, and the subdivision of the church then leads to variances that are needed because of its sort of arbitrary lines, taking existing conditions into account. And just speaking to planning, obviously, whatever the subdivision recommendations are from the city, the church will abide by those, so that condition is fine. The other property, which is a existing office operated by the Episcopal Housing Corporation. It's been there for a number of years. Also is then being subdivided from the cemetery, and that creates lot lines related to the physical condition of the cemetery itself. So those are reasonable variances to act based on the unique condition of what's proposed before you. I would disagree respectfully to your director in that basically what's being created by this subdivision is and one might argue is already the case, is a non-conforming use for the cemetery. It's an existing situation. Mr. Carroll can talk about how the cemetery has operated, will continue to operate. It's not an active cemetery at the moment, and it won't be. There are families that have rights to the cemetery if they choose to use them, but it's not like it's an active cemetery, and we can go into that as you wish. But I would argue that the board does have the authority to approve the variances, approve the neighborhood commercial use, and also allow the existing cemetery to remain a non-conforming use. There's no reason why the city should rezone it to open space or residential. I think it was a mistake in the code, for sure, because there are freestanding cemeteries that don't have that designation. Many cemeteries associated with a church are accessory uses or non-conforming uses. We're just having a institutional use maintained in perpetuity, and rather than put a cloud on it, I would just acknowledge, if the board would approve it, that this could remain a non-conforming use. And if you want to suggest to the city council, as part of the Transform Baltimore amendment that sometime might get passed this decade, then we would we would suggest that. But allow the subdivision to proceed and not let the, which I think is an anomaly, dictate that. And maybe Mr. Carroll can also just speak for the diocese.
David Carroll, C-A-R-R-O-L-L. I guess one of the issues is we're sort of caught betwixt and between, and in an unusual situation, and if it's decided against moving forward, we are left with a property that cannot be sold. There are not many buyers for cemeteries around there,
Right.
and it would become a detriment to the community with a large building that we have leased in the past, but with an ambiguous future. And I would proffer that would be a very negative impact. We have the last plot that was sold in the cemetery was in 2002, and we will not be selling any additional plots in that cemetery. It will be closed and maintained, although the formal closure process is a little murky, but we will close it. There will not be, and we can sign affidavits that it will not be sold. The diocese has the perpetual responsibility for maintaining that cemetery. I would like to just point out that there's a large section in the cemetery that is open and vacant, and people say, well, you got lots more land there to sell. Those are unmarked graves from the victims of the 1917 and 1918 influenza epidemic that the Episcopal Diocese donated to indigent individuals to be buried there. So there are not additional plots that can be sold, even though it may appear that way. So we make that commitment, and we want to move forward to find some use, a developer who will develop this as an asset, the church building as an asset to the community and to the city of Baltimore. Episcopal Housing Corporation is already an asset. They spent quite a bit of money renovating what is known as the chapel. We will continue to have them as occupants of that building.
Is there there's one building on either side of the cemetery?
Yeah, one is.
If I'm on Roland Avenue facing the cemetery, which building is all the way to the right and which is all the way to the left?
The one on your right was known as the chapel, and that's the Episcopal Housing Corporation.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, Mr. Baird, just so for note purposes, your solution is the board affirm the existing non-conforming use.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct. And one can hardly see that as a precedent affecting maybe other cemeteries, if that was the case. But just ask the board and staff to be creative about this and recognize we have a unique situation. both for the variances, the uses. Certainly the neighborhood commercial use meets the standards of a non-residential building becoming what is now a very well-liked office use, nonprofit use for Episcopal housing. The church, when it is sold eventually, after subdivision, will have to come back to the board either, as if it becomes a neighborhood commercial, it could be sold to another church, which would, have the use itself already permitted. So.
Okay.
Unless there are any other questions.
Any questions?
I would point out there is a higher authority, we answer to.
Understood.
Little levity, I'm sorry.
Thank you for that.
Hey, you're the last one on the docket.
Yeah, well, the last shall come first.
I bet you got these for days.
Easter continues. All right. All right, thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate your presentation.
Thank you.
Okay. And that will conclude the docket for today?
That will conclude the docket for today.
Okay.
And we are off the record.
Off the record.